name is Amrita and this is my booktube. If you like bookish content, hit that subscribe button. Now, a few weeks ago, I did my Mr. Rochester ranking, and I thought now that the Bad News Lovers episodes have come to an end, I would do a similar ranking for all the Mr. Darcy adaptations that I have seen. And you guys, I have seen so many more Mr. Darcy adaptations or Pride and Prejudice adaptations than I have even of Jane Eyre. But before I begin, I just want to do a tiny bit of housekeeping and let you all know that in the last week of January 2021, I am planning to do a buddy read of sorts that is themed around Jane Austen's Persuasion. So if you have not read the book, or if you've always wanted to read the book, or if you have read it but haven't reread it in a long time but would like to re-familiarize yourself with it, then I would love it if you would join. And this is really open to anybody. Like, you don't need to have a channel of your own. It's fine if you don't. I have a bunch of my friends who don't do any kind of content creation joining in. And I also have a few friends who are on Bookstagram or are here on BookTube joining in as well. So it's really open to anybody. You just need to let me know so that I can put you on the list, and then I can sort of keep you updated about things that are coming up. So if you're a content creator, then I'll probably have like a few things. I don't exactly know what as of yet, but I will have something for you by the end of November. So you have plenty of time to read the book and to gather your thoughts and decide what you want to do during that week. But the discussion as such will be in private because not everybody wants to be on video. So it'll be just a private chat between friends, and my friends are awesome. It's always a fun time when everyone gets together and talks about a book that they loved or they hated, and everybody has opinions, and it's a pretty safe space. So if you hate it, you can just say I hate it and make me cry. But it'll be fun. So let me know. Do not leave your contact information in the comments if you don't have a channel or a Twitter account or something. Like, if you're sending me an email address, then do not leave it in the comments. It is not safe. Instead, find me on either Twitter or Instagram, and then you can't DM me on Twitter, but you can DM me on Insta. And also, my settings on Twitter are kind of strict, so if you try and tweet to me and I don't respond, then it's probably because you've been blocked by my settings. So then you can come and just let me know in the comments that you tried to tweet at me and I didn't respond, and I'll get back to you. But otherwise, just find me on Insta or something and just DM me and I'll add you to the list. Right, so now that's done, let's get back to the tier ranking of Mr. Darcy's. So just to quickly touch upon the criteria, this is not a popularity contest. So there are going to be decisions made in the making of this list that are going to be controversial, but then, that's my brand. And also, while I am interested in authenticity, I am not slavish about it. So it's fine if it's not entirely true to the original. That's okay. In fact, there are definitely adaptations here that are more truthful to the source material but are going to be ranked a little lower for other reasons. So it's all a fine balance, and it is pretty subjective. So let's start with Sir Laurence Olivier. Now, this is a film that was released in 1940, and honestly, it is so great. It is absolutely, completely, and utterly miscast. Everybody is way too old to be in this film, and it is, the costumes are wrong, everything about it is just a no. But it is delightful because it's full of these actors who are really great at what they do, and I enjoy it quite a bit. I don't think Olivier even acts when he's doing Darcy. He's just, a snooty upper class Englishman. That's what he is. So he just basically plays himself on film, and it is delightful. I really enjoy it. So to start things off, we're going to put Sir Laurence Olivier at number 1. Next up is David Rintoul from the 1980 miniseries, and I hope I'm saying his name right because I was just thinking to myself as I was making this list that I have literally never seen him in anything other than that series. And then I googled him and I discovered, well, for one thing, the reason why I haven't seen him in anything is because he is primarily a stage actor and has worked extensively with the National Theatre and with the Royal Shakespeare Company, so big ups for that. But also he has appeared in a fairly recent big budget giant show. He was Mad King Aerys in the Game of Thrones. What? I would not have recognized him. In fact, I didn't recognize him. What am I saying? But I do have to say that that progression is just perfect, from like Darcy to Mad King Aerys. Now this particular version is perhaps the most authentic, it's very faithful to the source material. And a lot of people hold to it that he is perhaps the best Darcy ever because he is so perfect in this role. And I agree, he is really perfect. He there's that proposal scene that he does that I think is the best proposal scene of all the proposal scenes that are, I don't know if it has ever been filmed, but it's definitely the best proposal scene from all the versions that I'm talking about in this list. What really gets to me about that performance is that he starts off hitting the exact note that I have always imagined that Darcy would adopt when he says that speech. It's very nonchalant. He really doesn't think that he's saying anything wrong. He's just very matter of fact when he tells her, oh, like, I'm terribly in love with you, but your family sucks and I really didn't want to say this. I was hoping that I could avoid it, but my God, like, I can't struggle any longer. So yeah, you're gonna marry me, right? And he doesn't even really put it to her as a proposal or a question. He just takes it for granted that he, William Darcy, is going to ask this woman, who's not even that pretty and comes from like the worst family, and who's going to be a total embarrassment to him and to the name of Darcy. Of course she's going to say yes. Which is why when she puts him in his place, his demeanor completely changes. And I have to say, David Rintoul does such a great version of that proposal scene. Like, it doesn't happen immediately. Like, it takes time for her words to sink in and for him to realize that she is being deadly serious. She means it when she tells him that she can't stand him. And also, it's this weird thing, but throughout the movie, he just sounds exactly like Colin Firth. Maybe they're from like the same part of England, maybe they went to the same university or whatever, but it is uncanny. Also, he's really pretty. So here's what I'm gonna do. I am gonna knock Sir Laurence Olivier down to number 2 and put David Rintoul on top, where he belongs, for now. Next up is one of Colin Firth's 2 appearances on this list, and this one is Mark Darcy from Bridget Jones's Diary. Now this is obviously not a traditional Pride and Prejudice adaptation, and a lot of people might perhaps take exception to it, but I was really affected by a conversation that I had with my friend Panda. That's not her real name, obviously, but that's a social moniker. But she did this poll about which was the best Darcy, and she didn't put Mark Darcy on that poll. And she and I were discussing whether the poll results would have changed if she had put Mark Darcy on that list, because everybody loves Mark Darcy, right? Who out there has a soul so dead that they don't love Mark Darcy? Identify yourselves. We shall pelt you with garbage at noon. Like I mentioned in my Bad News Lovers episode about Darcy, Mark is really the better, more evolved version of Darcy in that he understands that he needs to work on himself, and he does work on himself, and he doesn't change who he is as a person. He just finds it within himself to accommodate Bridget's many eccentricities. He's gorgeous and he's employed and he's smart and he's supportive and he is just a real gent, and he's played by Colin Firth. I love him. So that is an automatic, goes straight to the top of the list. And just when things were going so well, we come to Martin Henderson from Pride and Prejudice. Now, this particular film, it stars Aishwarya Rai and Amrita and Naveen Andrews and like a whole bunch of other people. And it is often described as a Bollywood version of Pride and Prejudice, but I would like to point out that it actually is not. It's an homage to the style of Bollywood filmmaking, but it is not in fact a Bollywood film. It is a British film, a British Asian film, directed by Gurinder Chadha, who made, Bend It Like Beckham, which is another really great film. Pride and Prejudice, on the other hand, I honestly, sincerely don't know a single Indian who likes that film. Like, we all find it incredibly cringe, but it is a favorite for many in Britain and in America, and you know what? That's fine by me. You do you. And it is very pretty, Namrata Shirodkar, who plays Jane, was actually Miss India, and then Aishwarya Rai is just gorgeous. Naveen Andrews is insane. I have literally no idea what he's doing throughout this film, and he's playing Bingley. And Martin Henderson plays Mr. Darcy, and I have never seen a man more embarrassed and unwilling to be where he is. There are scenes in this film where he literally just wishes he were dead. Like the earth would open and swallow him up. Like he does not want to be there. It is hilarious, and I don't know what he thought he was signing up for. I think he probably thought it was something like, Bend It Like Beckham, and then it wasn't. It was this, and he was just like, what is happening? And I think he tried to channel that into his portrayal of Darcy so that, it sounds like Darcy doesn't want to be where he is and is uncomfortable where he is. But honestly, I don't think it was really Darcy. I think it was just him. Maybe he's just too good an actor. I don't know. I do know that it was just an incredibly uncomfortable experience watching him on screen. I mean, the man was acting next to Aishwarya Rai and just could not. And also, the two of them just had the worst chemistry. So this is something that any Indian can tell you. Aishwarya has a very specific vibe. She is beautiful, but she needs a certain spark with her co-actor to really have that chemistry on screen, and there's maybe 3 men that I can think of who can really do that for her, and Martin Henderson is definitely not on that list. So this is by far my worst Darcy adaptation. Next up is Matthew Rhys in Death Comes to Pemberley, which is a show that I've spoken about in my 4 murder shows to watch video, so you can check that out if you're interested. And I love Matthew Rhys, but like I've said before, this is not a popularity contest, so I have to take away a few points in spite of his fine performance for the fact that this is not really a Pride and Prejudice adaptation as much as it is a continuation of the story. And although it is the same characters, I feel like it's a little hard to think of Rhys as Darcy when he doesn't have any of the traditional scenes that we associate with Darcy. And the dynamic is very different because in this version, Darcy and Elizabeth are already married. So things have changed. And while Rhys does a good job of showing where Darcy might be a few years after marriage, it is not what I need from a Darcy experience. And so as such, I like him. I think he is a better Darcy than, Henderson, definitely. But also, I think I'm going to put him above Laurence Olivier because, like I said, Olivier, charming as he is, isn't really Darcy. Whereas Rhys, even though he is not in a traditional adaptation, is Darcy. So I'm going to put him right above Olivier. And now we come to a Darcy who really surprised me, one of my two big surprises on this list, and that is Daniel Vincent Gordh from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Now, for those of you who weren't around for that, I think the Lizzie Bennet Diaries started in around, I want to say 2013 or so, and it was one of the big first web series that really broke out. And the concept is that it's a modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and it's shot as a series of vlogs. So Lizzie has she's on YouTube, and she has a channel, and she makes vlogs. And you'd think that that would get super old super fast and that they would run into a bunch of roadblocks almost immediately, but they really make it work. And it was really innovative and charming, and a lot of us really liked it when it came out. And David Vincent Gordh, whom I don't think I've seen in anything else since, which is wild to me because he was so good in that series, but he is a very charming Darcy. He does that thing that Matthew Macfadyen does where, he just plays him as honest but socially awkward. He just has like puppy dog eyes that are at 50% power as compared to Macfadyen, but we'll come to that in a little bit. Gordh was really great in interpreting what Darcy might look like and behave in a modern context, from the costuming details, the way he carries it off, the way he shows the growth of the character over the vlogs. And he has such great chemistry with the woman that's playing Lizzie Bennet. I mean, it is marvelous. It's very modern, but it is also very true to the feel of the original book. And I think that's very important. And I am actually going to place him pretty high on this list. I'm going to put him right below Colin Firth as Mark Darcy. I try to be as objective as possible, but what's the use of having your own channel and shooting your own video if you can't make your own choices? I like Daniel. I want him up there. Next up is another one of my surprises, and by surprises I don't mean that I'm trying to surprise you, I mean that I was surprised, and that's Sam Riley from Bride and Prejudice and Zombies, which was a really fun graphic novel. And then when I heard that they were going to turn it into a movie, I thought it was the stupidest thing that I'd ever heard, and then I watched it and it was so charming. Like, I'm not even a horror fan. I don't care for zombies at all. Like, even in the horror genre, like the things that I do like, I don't like zombies. I think they're disgusting and I don't want to even think about them. And this movie is full of zombies, as you can imagine. But I had such a good time watching it. Lily James and Sam Riley have some of the best chemistry of all the Darcys and Lizzie Bennets on this list. And Sam Riley is such a perfect little human. I have seen him in very few things, but in this one, he is adorable. And that's not a term that I would generally use for Darcy, and that's why he has to come down the list a little bit, because you don't really want an adorable Darcy. But I think he does a really great job of staying true to the character and how the character might behave in these extraordinary circumstances. And again, if you look at the proposal scene between Darcy and Lizzie, the first proposal scene, where in this version they just have a giant fight. And it sort of veers towards Zorro, like the Catherine Zeta-Jones version. Do you remember that? Like, it sort of goes in that direction a little bit, and it's funny and it's hot and it is still really angry. I really enjoyed it. I think, weirdly enough, this particular version of Pride and Prejudice is probably more faithful to the source material than even Death Comes to Pemberley. So I am going to place him right above Matthew Rhys. I told you, I'm full of surprises. Next we have Juan Antonio from the Bride and Prejudice Atlanta, which is a movie that aired fairly recently on Lifetime. And this particular version is a American look at the story, and it's set in a Black community in Atlanta. And first of all, you already know that's going to be awesome, but also I had to laugh at the title because it's sort of reminiscent of, the Real Housewives franchise or something. So, you have like Real Housewives Beverly Hills, Real Housewives Atlanta, and you just have like Bride and Prejudice, Atlanta. It makes me laugh. This particular adaptation has an energy to it, and it is funny, and it is really fresh, and I really enjoyed it. But you have to understand, it is a Lifetime movie, and a Lifetime movie has to be in line with its branding. So there are certain notes that it needs to hit, and there are certain cadences, and there's a certain flow to it. And because of that, that particular cadence interferes with Austen's cadence. And it's not really a British thing versus an American thing. It is very specifically a Lifetime thing versus, whatever else. I have no shade to throw at Lifetime movies. Like, there are times in my life and that's the only thing I want to watch. So this is not coming from a place of judgment, but I do think that Will Darcy in this, played by Juan Antonio, who is delicious, but he's not Darcy. He is entirely too nice and too much in love with Lizzie from the beginning for him to be the Mr. Darcy that, the rest of us love. However, as an adaptation, I highly recommend it. I think if you can find a version of it streaming somewhere, you should absolutely watch it. It is charming, and it is funny, and it is quite soothing for these times. Will Darcy, however, comes way down the list, right below Olivier and right above Martin Henderson, who continues to be the worst. Right, so now we come to the eternal question. Colin Firth from the 95 miniseries, or Matthew Macfadyen from the 2005 movie with Keira Knightley. Colin Firth obviously just owned that role when that series came out, that he is always going to be Mr. Darcy. They're going to put that in his obituary when he dies. For an entire generation of women, of whom I am one, he is going to be the quintessential Mr. Darcy. The way he talks, the way he looks, the way he stares at Lizzie, the way he looks at her with these expressions in his eyes without ever letting himself verbalize it. There's a lot of soulful staring in that miniseries, and because it's a miniseries, it went on for a very long time to all our delight. And on the other hand, you have Matthew Macfadyen, who is earnest and soft and yearning, and is a man who is absolutely at the mercy of his love. And while a lot of people talk about how the 2005 version isn't authentic, I would say the 95 version also takes quite a few liberties because, there's Colin Firth with his shirt off in the bath, and he's, going for a swim in the lake, etc. I mean, these are not things that Jane Austen was writing about. So I don't want authenticity to be a factor in how I judge these things, but I do think that one of these men played Darcy as Austen envisioned him emotionally, whereas the other man plays him as Austen envisioned him physically. And while my inclination is to go with the physical side of things, because I'm shallow and that's how I roll, integrity compels me to say that the top Mr. Darcy, the one who is socially awkward, softly yearning, lonely and unable to deal with his feelings, who becomes a better man because it is unthinkable that he won't after encountering Elizabeth, has to be Matthew Macfadyen. I literally cannot believe that those words came out of my mouth, but it is true. I think the number 2 Mr. Darcy is Colin Firth from the 95 miniseries, and number 1 is Matthew Macfadyen. A little schlubby, improved with money, and desperately in love with Keira Knightley. So let me know if you have seen any or all of these adaptations and which is your favorite, and if you have any issues with my list or a list of your own. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.